Welcome to the Judgment Free Zone. You've downloaded the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast, episode 53 for May 22nd, 2023.
Now adjust the volume control so that the sound can be heard in all parts of the room.
Recorded live from the cornfields of Central Illinois, you're listening to the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast with Matt and Amy. Come and learn and share a journey with two former craft beer enthusiasts who went from daily drinkers to teetotalers and basically never lost their love for their life together.
Hey, a freak show!
Hello there, children. Welcome back to your weekly freak show that is the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast. I am Matt, along with the always lovely and fluffy-haired day Coach Amy.
Got it.
How are you, my love, all over there in your branded colors?
I'm good.
You're
How
good.
about you?
I say weekly, but I think we missed last week, didn't we?
We did.
And we'll
you know,
probably
it
miss-
was Mother's Day, but we kind of gave everybody this warning
That's
that
true.
there could be the next few weeks. I'm going to say probably next week there won't be a new
Probably
episode.
not a new episode next week. Don't miss this
maybe.
one.
I mean,
we may be able to make one work. We'll see.
we've got, but
Just in case, let's tell you
this
there won't be.
week is graduation week.
Yes.
And it's also we've got family coming in. We got the yard and everything. The house was painted. The mulch has been laid.
The food is getting ordered, and
Yes.
some has been purchased.
Yes.
We're basically there.
We're getting there.
The tents are ready, not up, but ready.
Yes, we've got a couple tents. We've got to pick up everything. So this week is a little stressful.
Yes.
But that's okay. It's
We're-
going to be fun.
Yes, it'll be fun.
Luke will be coming home next weekend. He starts his new job the following week.
That graduation done last weekend too,
Yeah,
so it's graduation
and-
palooza around here.
It is, and it's exciting. And I'll be honest with you, and I'm in the process of our alcohol-free spirit group. The group that we have they're loving the community so much that they have asked to extend to another 6 weeks. And so if you are interested in doing the alcohol-free spirit experiment, we are kind of doing a hybrid because we're going to have some new people joining in who are going to do that 30-day break from alcohol. But we've got our group who is in this. And one of the things that they said is we love the community. And we kind of put it out to them. What if some new people joined? They're like, Cool.
Yeah.
We're good with that. So
this is a group thing, right?
it's a group program. And then the nice thing about this is it's like everybody's at different stages, but that is the great thing about a small group is that you have people who are a little bit further ahead and they're like, no, I've done this, or here's this suggestion. And it's just really nice. And plus in our group, we add in the faith with it. And so if you are someone new to this, you're going to receive everything from the original program plus
the new stuff.
The new stuff. And so that's kind of exciting. It's exciting to just be creating new content. And so I'm excited about it. If you are interested, please just reach out. You can just go to joyontheotherside.com and just reach out to me at amy@joyontheotherside.com.
And while you're there, or if you're not ready for a program like that, you can always just pick up our 7 tips that helped us. That's the alcohol 5 o'clock summer alcohol-free edition.
Yay, you got it. And that, you know what, that actually, there's some, I read through that again last night. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to look through this. I'm like, this is really good.
Just in case.
It truly is everything that we did.
I hope so. We did it.
I know. And I'm like, oh, it's just kind of, you have that out there. And I'm like, that whole, replace the ingredients, keep the ritual. Right. I mean, I tell people that all the time.
It's a true story.
It helps. And you can do that with Go Brewing.
There you go, with Go Brewing. Go Brewing is one of the ambassadors for Go Brewing. So go to gobrewing.com. You click the link down there in our description and get $5 off your first order.
Yeah.
There you go.
So,
if you've already ordered, sometimes they send you coupons.
And what is really cool is one of the gals in my group, she just got the, I can't remember. It's not the Corona. It's I'd have to look it up. We'll put
Oh,
it.
I
We'll
forget.
put,
I forget what
but
it's
it's
called,
the basically.
It's like they're
It's
taking
got the
a
lime and
yeah.
the salt, and
Yeah.
it's so good. And she's like, "This is so much better."
But I don't think we've ordered that one yet. We need to, though.
Yeah, no, we did. We had it.
Did we? Oh, I lose track.
We just need more.
We just need more.
It's not in the refrigerator anymore. So you're thinking, I didn't order that. Yes, you did.
All right, Coach Amy, we need to get to an awesome interview we have coming up. But what's your drink of the week, real quick?
Oh, my drink of the week is Spindrift this week. It's the No-Hito. It's their lime and mint, and we got it at Target.
Yeah, you found a Target. Yeah, so it's like if you could make a full-on NA mojito with just that and like
You
whatever.
put in the
tequila-
Ritual.
Yeah, you could put in like Ritual tequila or something.
Yeah.
Tequila.
But
And-
I just like it like this.
Yeah, but you can make it feel more fancy if you put it like
Put
in
some
a
more
copper,
lime in it,
Put in
whatever.
a copper cup and put
It's
in a little.
really,
Yes.
really yummy.
It's an ultimate
I
mojito
was
cheat code.
so excited.
Oh my god! I already ordered to pick up.
Oh
I didn't
my
want anybody
gosh,
to take it.
they have it.
I'm doing one. Amy's going to try the other flavor next week. I think we've had this before on the show, but Hoplark sparkling tea. It's a tea, but they brew it with hops, and they brew each one with some different
Yeah,
hops. Like
absolutely.
there's a green tea. This is the black tea, and it's 0 calories too. So
But it's got that caffeine in it.
it does have the caffeine.
And
kids,
I
so-
have to cut my caffeine off at 10:30, people.
and you have only 4 whole calories in your Spindrift. So
I know,
you can drink
it's
both these for 4 calories. So watch your calories.
So good, guys.
All right, Coach Amy, let's get to our interview
All right.
with Jenna and Buck. Give us a little background.
So we are interviewing today Jenna and Buck Robinson, and they are from Richmond, Virginia. And they've got a story that's kind of similar to us. Jenna actually found the alcohol experiment and This Naked Mind book about a year prior to Buck coming along. And their story is one of she was questioning her drinking and, you know, her relationship with alcohol. And over a year, Buck kind of fought her on this. And then finally, due to a health scare and then a surprise.
Surprise
that-
information. So
yeah.
say
So
this
you'll
now.
have to listen to it. But he did find out some medical information that he needed. And it finally prompted him to pick up the book, This Naked Mind, and read it. And he has gone from... I want to say, I think his T-shirt he had was malt whiskey to back to being an ultra marathon runner, an Ironman. So it's a really great interview, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. Well, welcome to the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast. We have Buck Robinson and his wife, Jenna. I've kind of gotten acquainted with you guys through the alcohol experiment websites, the different sites on Facebook. And I've been following Buck's story for a while. And just in passing, I thought, you know what, I'm going to reach out because Buck hit his 3-year alcohol-free anniversary. And it was just earlier this May, or was it at the end of April?
Just at the beginning of the month. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you guys if you would come on to the show and tell us a little bit about you guys, what you guys like to do for fun, where you're at in this world of ours. And then again, we'll just jump into you guys' collective story.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. So where are you guys coming from today?
So we're from Richmond, Virginia. And
Awesome.
I was born and raised here in the suburbs of Richmond, really. I'm a stay-at-home mom to our 3 kids. We have a teenager and 2 preteens. And then our miniature long-haired dachshund, who is like a child in almost all respects. And yeah.
Including the noise level.
Yeah, the noise level
Yes.
for sure. I'm a writer. I write historical fiction, and in my spare time, we like to do some of the same things. We love hiking and camping, and obviously love reading as well, and movies and gardening.
Yeah. And I'm
Awesome.
a Richmond transplant. I've been here about 20 years now. So it feels like home. Certainly when somebody would say, "Where are you from?" I would say Richmond immediately. But I was not originally. I was born and raised in Los Angeles and came to Richmond by way of DC, which was not really much of a change of coast, but really not much of a change of lifestyle or pace of life or cost of living. And then I discovered Richmond, and actually Jenna and I used to work at the same company, and that's how we met, and were co-workers for a while and very good friends for a long time. And then we ended up kind of professing our love for one another, and 3 kids and 18 years later, here we are. So, and
Love it.
Before having kids, and just before having kind of met Jenna, I had done a lot of endurance sports. I got into it. That wasn't my background. I was very grossly overweight and heavily drinking and really having a bad time with my life before moving to Richmond, and literally challenged myself to say, can I go for a run? And I could not physically make it around the block. And that was a huge wake up call to me at the time. So I kind of trained a little bit, finally got around the block, did a local 5K, and as kind of the case, 5K turned to 10K, 10K turned to half marathon turned to marathon. And by the time we had met, I had done a couple of Ironman, about 10 marathons and things. So it was a very big part of my life. And then we got married. We had our first child, our son, and he was actually present at my last Ironman, which was 15 years ago. And then life took over, and I kind of slipped back into bad habits and let go of that part of my life and resumed the bad part, which was the drinking and the kind of letting my health go. And now it's good to be back. I'm 3 years sober and feeling very good about doing my first Ironman and what will be 16 years by the time I do it later this July.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations too.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said,
I mean,
it took a long time to get back to it, but it feels good to be back here again. And certainly it helps to recognize the void, the vacuum, if you will, that alcohol moved into, because that had been a big stress reliever and a big part of my life and kind of coping with things. And alcohol just became this, why go for a run when I can just open this bottle and immediately take care of the issues, and realizing that it didn't really take care of anything. It just superficially kind of felt like it did, you know?
wow. Well, Jenna, why don't we hear a little bit about your story, because you actually did the alcohol experiment first. And when was that?
Oh gosh. I think, well, I had been questioning my relationship with alcohol up until that point for a couple of years. I had never set out to just kind of fall down the rabbit hole of alcohol at all. I mean, it's something that we hear a lot, it's so common, especially with, parents and moms, especially. I think a lot of it was the stress we were experiencing in our lives at that time. And I was definitely starting to self-medicate. We have twins, as I mentioned, and our son. And at the time we were experiencing the most stress in our life and in our marriage due to business reasons that were happening, and the recession at the time, and then these 3 kids. I really had gone from looking at especially wine as something of as an indulgence. I'm also really big into food. I used to have a food blog back in the day. I love everything. I love baking and cooking, and wine was one of those things where it was like, I really enjoyed getting to learn about it, and therefore thought that it was something very sophisticated that I was doing and pairing it with foods. But then it really turned into, before I knew it, one glass making dinner, and a glass with dinner, and then a glass as dinner was ending, and then maybe one more for good measure. And on the weekends, it was even more. And it wasn't just wine. It was a lot. And it took me a while to understand that I was using it as a way to self-medicate for a lot of anxieties that I was feeling, as a lot of pressure. I think we hear it a lot with especially moms and dads too, saying you get to the end of your day, you just need to take that edge off, right? But I didn't know that the edge was the edge for me. I was tumbling right over it. So I think around about the summer before I actually quit, I had started really questioning what I was doing, because I was kind of looking around me and looking at friends and the people we hung out with, and nobody else seemed to have the problem that I had, or at least not the problem that was inside my head, the thing that I was grappling with, which was, I'm doing all this drinking, but I really don't like it. I don't like the way I feel. I don't like the way that I can't seem to get it off my mind. I was constantly, I mean, Buck has said for many times, and it's so true. I was that way for me too. I was constantly waiting for, when's the time that I can, pop the cork on that bottle and just, relax and unwind and enjoy. And I really started to wonder if I had a problem, but I didn't know where to start or how to tackle that problem, because I had quit before, for Lent. I had gone, the 40 days and been like, well, if I can quit and I can put that aside, then maybe this isn't such a problem. It's fine. Everything's fine. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, something does not feel right. I mean, I've even gone so far as to Googling, like, am I an alcoholic? But of course, Google's not going to tell you if you're an alcoholic. But I think the point is, if you're Googling that, you should probably examine it. If fast forward to my 40th birthday that October, and I actually had gone on an antibiotic for a bad sinus infection. And so I had, wanting the antibiotic to work really well, had stopped drinking alcohol. And so I'd been off of alcohol at that point, like, what was it, like 2 or 3 weeks? It was just enough time. And my sinus infection had cleared up. But I remember telling him the day of my birthday celebration, I said, I've got this headache I just can't shake. Like, it's just been with me for days and days and days, and I don't understand why. And I don't even know what made me ask it, but I was like, do you think maybe this is withdrawal symptoms from alcohol? And he said, well, it could be. And I was due to have my first drink that night, a glass of champagne, because it was my 40th. And he said, see how you feel afterwards. And it was immediate. As soon as I had that glass of champagne, the headache was gone. And you would have thought at that point, all of the bells and whistles and things should have gone off to say, hey, this is not so great. But instead, I actually doubled down on what I was doing and fell right back into that process. Long story short, very luckily, that close to New Year's, I was reading in People magazine and saw a book recommendation that they had for This Naked Mind. And they attached to it a story about Annie Grace and the alcohol experiment. And the things that really stuck out to me on that was shame-free, guilt-free, and also free. It didn't cost anything. And it was, the way it was positioned was a chance to explore your relationship with alcohol. And I thought, that's it. That's what I just knew it. I knew that was what I needed to do. And so I committed to the 30 days, and it really was completely life-changing for me.
Yeah. And so now you don't have that pull. That pull has been released.
I will say it's an ongoing challenge. It's not the easiest thing to explain. When I set out, I didn't set out, like, Buck and I are very different in this regard. I didn't set out saying, well, I want to be 100% sober. I just wanted to understand what was going on and maybe fix it. And as I had said to him, and he was always very understanding, like, he let me talk this out all the time to him and was so understanding and so wonderful about it. Even though it wasn't for him at the time, he let me do that, meaning he let me bounce things off of him. He was very accepting of it. And I had said, I just want to understand it and change it. And I want to go day by day, because at that point it did feel day by day. And I wasn't sure what the end result was going to look like, but I didn't have a hard stop of saying I'm going to be sober forever.
Sure.
So it was really challenging for a long time. And I think I stayed sober for a whole year after I started, a year and a half after I started This Naked Mind and the alcohol experiment. I could be wrong about that.
Sounds about right.
My sense of time and space since the pandemic is like, it is totally whack. Like those 3 years.
Pre and post now.
The lost years. But I found myself even doing the experiment. She explains all of this. And so knowing that you're going to still feel a pull, even though you haven't had a drink in a very long time, and that it's going to mess with you sometimes, was easier to tackle and deal with, because she had already explained all of that and set it up that could happen. So for me personally, I decided that what worked for me was moderation. But I'll explain it quickly that my idea of moderation is not what a lot of people's idea of moderation looks like. It looks like to me where I have very hard, fast rules about how and when and why I drink. I'm very specific and intentional about it. I never drink, for instance, at parties or social gatherings outside of weddings. Like at a wedding, I'll have a glass of celebratory wine or champagne. I leave it at that. At a nice dinner out, if we're celebrating something or a holiday, I'll have a glass of wine or two. But again, very intentional about it. And I don't take it past that point. And I always check in with myself when I'm doing it too. I'm always asking myself afterwards, was that really worth it? And usually it's not, you know.
Yeah, there's been many times. And then the next day said, you know what?
Yes.
Probably shouldn't have done it. I mean, like there was no benefit to it. And I already kind of have a headache the next day. And all that. She's like, you know, just a lesson learned again.
Yeah.
And I think what I love about your approach is that you are keeping your mindfulness right there, because that's the thing that I have talked with, because I'm a coach, and I will tell people, you know what, you just have to have those guardrails. You have to have your rules. And for me, I was just like, I didn't want rules anymore. So that's why I'm just like, I'm alcohol free. But if you have that, I guess that definition, like what you're going to do, and you're questioning it again when you're done, that's mindful drinking. And that's a part of this whole movement as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's great that, you know, you're there. I think it's awesome that Buck is supporting you in that as well. And I love the fact that Buck, even though it wasn't for you at that time when she was doing this, that you were supportive, because that is what I have found the hardest challenge for clients of mine, that if they don't have a spouse who is at least supporting them, it's just almost impossible for them to get traction going.
Well, that said,
let's go into this now.
Take off my halo and put on my, because I was supportive in the sense that I thought it was something that was great for her. She said, you know, would you be interested in doing it too? And I made it very clear, no, I was not interested in that at all. At the time, I was very much in love with my alcohol. I was very much in love with my relationship with alcohol. It was an extremely important part of my personality, if you will, my lifestyle, everything. It was kind of central to my business socialization and all that kind of stuff. And so there was no interest in derailing that freight train. But for her, I was like, that's great. But I want to make it very clear, and I think that you probably will recognize this. Like there was the slippery slope was covered with like Vaseline. It slipped very quickly because I'd be like, I'm not going to drink in front of you. That maybe lasted 2 weeks. Then it was like, I'm not going to drink wine in front of you, because I knew wine was her favorite. And like, she doesn't like whiskey and things. So I'd be like, she won't be tempted by that. Well, I did that. Well, that's not true. So I wouldn't do that. And then that stopped. And then I was just like, well, I won't have, I won't drink a lot. And all of those good intentions fell by the wayside very quickly, because what it was, I'll be very candid about it. And it's one of the things that I not proud of, but it's true, is that at that time, my relationship with alcohol, it was so important to me that it wasn't worth that. Like I couldn't give that up, because it was just such a central part of how I got through my day, through my week, through my everything. And so while I was supportive, yes, I was also very much looking for opportunities to try and get my drinking buddy back, and to be able to try and because if she was like, well, I'll just have one, I'd be like, like immediately, oh, sure, you don't want another one? Like, I was not you said you just wanted one. I'd be like, come on, what is it? And then the next day, where it really started to make me question it, was she'd be regretting that. She'd be like, I shouldn't have done that. Why did we do that? And then I would look at myself and say, well, it really, yeah, I didn't like force it down her throat, but it was me that caused her to do something she didn't want to do. And now she's sitting there beating herself up, but I'm the bad guy. And so that really started the wheels turning in my head as to why do I do that? Why is it so important to me that she drink? Like, why does that? And what it really, obviously, as I came to realize later, is because it made me not feel bad about what I was doing. And any kind of internalized guilt that I was having was alleviated as soon as she started drinking too. Now I didn't have to be aware of the difference. And to be honest with you, one of the main things that really helped, and it was a process. Like I always say, a lot of people are like, well, I experienced something that was akin to what Annie in her book talks about with her father, which is this spontaneous sobriety. It was not spontaneous. It might have happened in a day, and then from that day forward, I stopped. But the lead up to that day was very much a process.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that process was really getting to a point of just understanding why am I so afraid of following in Jenna's footsteps? Like, why is what she's doing? I can run marathons. I can do all this, but I can't do that. That scares the hell out of me. And I really needed to figure that out. Like, why? Why does that seem so intimidating? And then on the flip side, looking at her and looking at how, as she got further and further away from it, how she was happy, she was doing well, she was able to handle these situations that I looked at and like, God, how would I do that without having a drink in my hand? She really, not to, in any way, shape, or form, blow sunshine on it, but she inspired me. She inspired me. She's always been my inspiration in so many other facets of our life and our marriage. But in this one, she really was my hero to look at and say, if she can do it, I need to really figure out why I can't do it too. And this book, which is funny because in the prep to leading this, I fully remember that it was on my bedside table. She's like, no, it was on your desk. I'm like, no, I swear it was on my bedside table. Regardless, it was there for a year staring at me. And she kept very, not subtly, I'd say, but just very supportively, like, have you thought about reading it? Have you read any of it yet? I'd love to talk with you about it. If you get a chance to read it, wouldn't it be interesting to share notes and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, no. It was just like this thing that I was at. It was there. I knew it was there, but I was shunning it. I was like, get away from me, book. And then one day I picked it up and I read it. And since that day, I haven't had a drop of alcohol. Literally.
Wow.
Like that one day was the final piece that I needed to be able to fully and completely walk away.
It was more effective reading it than using it as a coaster for your Jack Daniels, right?
That's exactly. I think I probably did do that a few times just to spite it, just to see what would happen.
maybe it'll go
flames.
osmosis
Like
into the whiskey,
or
then you drink the
something.
whiskey. Yeah. Buck, I'm curious, when Jenna, because it was about a year, right, between her quitting and you quitting. During that time, were there like, say, Saturday mornings or something where you were like, oh, man, I drank last night and she didn't, and she has all this energy and she wants to do all this stuff, and I just want to lay in bed. Did you have any of those? Like, I'm curious, like, how it impacted your marriage in that kind of hybrid world where you were still kind of trying to hold on to that bottle and she was trying to let go of it. Were there any challenges there? I mean, you did touch, I appreciate you touching on that whole, like, kind of, supportive sabotage at the same time, right? But were there other times of like seeing her be able to like have more energy and more optimism because she wasn't drinking than you were, since you still were?
Well, I'll be really candid. It was less about the Saturday mornings the Sunday mornings, and much more about the Saturday nights, right? So I doubled down, and I really did start to double down. I was like, I dug in, and just to be totally, and this is not something obviously that I'm proud of, but it is what it is that what was different was, if we had ever, and we nobody has a perfect marriage, but we've always had a very loving and supportive one, that when or if we ever really did have any disputes or whatever, alcohol was always a part of it, like an integral part of it. Like, we never had a fight with each other that didn't have alcohol on both of our parts.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were both drunk, right?
100%.
So here we were. Now it was only one person in the equation that had that as an excuse. And I was like, I got angry. I got angry about like, you're trying to change me. You're trying to take this away from me. You don't understand. And like all this, I look back, I'm like, come on, dude, what on earth? But at the time, it was all part of that process of like kind of having the darkness before the dawn of, gosh, why that? So that why I say that Saturday night, here she was just very patiently being like, listen, we're not going to get into this. You're drunk right now. I'm not going to like, we're not going to do this. I'm going to just walk away from this. And that would, of course, make me, I'm not drunk. Right. And of course I would. Ridiculous. So it was that part of it that made me that much more like, wait, now only one of us is pulling that card. The other one can be rational. The other one can be supportive and compassionate of the situation. I'm now, whatever degree I would be able to say, well, I'm not the bad guy. We were both equally guilty. Now there was nobody else to blame but myself. And so I look back at that now and just the degree to which I had to struggle, the degree to which I wrestled with it. And it really was a question of like saying I was afraid to say, who am I?
Mm.
And Jenna, I'm curious. So on these Saturday nights when you were sort of the sober voice in the room, and Buck, I love I'm not drunk. The most drunk people usually say they're not drunk, right?
Sure.
But Jenna, I'm curious, what were your thoughts on those Saturday nights and looking at your own marriage going forward, going, how is this going to play out long term if he's going to keep doubling down on his drinking and I'm trying to get further away, and are you going to have to be the rock all the time and deal? I mean, what were you thinking as far as like a marriage standpoint going forward if this path continues? What were we thinking?
Well, it took me a long time to kind of get to that point, because I think, as you both can probably empathize with, when you're in it and you're going through the experiment, and even in so many months that follow, you're kind of in your own head. And so about the situation in general. And so when I was finally able to kind of poke my head up and look around and understand what was going on and see what he was doing, it like I said, it took a while for me to get there. Yeah, it was not easy. He says that he was trying to actively derail me. I didn't feel that at all. I very much felt like our problems, even though we were doing it together, our problems were actually separate. It was a him problem and a me problem when I was taking care of my problem. But I didn't realize, I guess, that he was trying to derail me, because it didn't feel like that to me. Because in all honesty, like I said, he had been very supportive, and would let me talk this stuff out. I would say for, those Saturday nights were tough. I mean, there were a lot of times when the weather was nice, when the two of us, we have a wonderful backyard and fire pit, and we would go out back with music and drink and talk about the future and just stay out there. And then, it became he was going to go out back, and, it would be very late, and he would be playing the music very loud, and I would
singing
very loud. And I'd have to go out there and be like, honey, I'm probably going to go to bed now. I think you should really turn down the music. And so that was tough. It was tough, for a long time, being that voice, being the only voice of, reason, I guess. But yeah, it worried me a lot, especially because a year to when I had gone through this journey, then the pandemic hit. And suddenly we were at home all the time, and the kids were home all the time. And my anxiety was through the roof. His anxiety was through the roof. But I no longer had alcohol to kind of help me through it. And that was when I really started getting worried about him. I really started just being afraid that maybe he never would pick up the book and read it, that he would never entertain the idea of changing, and I didn't know what that would look like for our marriage. There were, some very dark moments where I wasn't really sure how our marriage would go forward long term. I mean, not in the immediate sense of, well, this is never going to last, but just looking down the road of, is this what it's going to be like forever? And that was really scary. I think I prayed for him a lot, but I was praying about that specific situation, daily, that something would change and that he would, get the help that he needed, and that the situation could change.
Oh, Jenna, I so appreciate that, because, I do a journal every morning, and a prayer journal, especially during that time. I was very, very faithful to that. And I can just remember writing that in my prayer journal,
Yeah.
please see us through this, let what's going to happen. Because I know when I read the book, I was just like, I remember Annie saying, you can't change your spouse.
Right.
And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just see how this goes. And I wanted to touch on, Buck, you had actually gone into your doctor.
Yeah.
As well. Was that the catalyst for the change to pick up the book?
So I like to think of it as, instead of any one particular thing, it was kind of this perfect storm of a lot of things coming together. And it was two very material kind of revelations in my life that all together, orchestrated into this like flashing neon sign of warning, got to change, got to turn left, detour, right? Was one, I was just approaching 50. I was at 49. And so I was approaching that big milestone, and went in for my annual checkup. And my doctor, I was kind of, I never, it's funny now when you look back at yourself, how much you can fool yourself into really thinking that, I wasn't out of shape, and I was almost 50 pounds heavier than I am today and all that stuff. But I kept saying to myself, I'm just stocky and I'm doing great and all this kind of stuff. Right. And my doctor had a real come to Jesus with me. He's like, you are not a healthy person. Your numbers for your age are not good. They're not good for anybody, but especially not where you're at. You are pre-diabetic. You have hypertension. You have, very high blood pressure. You're, at the time I already had gout. So I was already dealing with something that was an inflammatory type of issue in my body. But he's like, your future is not going to be a long one if you keep going the way that you're going. And what future you have will be one that will be almost entirely prescription pharmaceutically manipulated. Like, you will need to be on a litany of drugs to get from here to there, and even there won't be very far. And that scared me. It was meant to, and it did. And I probably would have changed for a time as a result of that, but then something else came along that scared me even further. And so together they really were compounded one another. And that's that I found out, and I won't go into the long details of it, but I found out that the man who I thought was my father was not my biological father, that I had actually been born from a sperm donor. And as crazy story as it is, I ended up finding that gentleman and connecting with him. And now we have a great relationship, but having an opportunity to, have a discovery at almost 50 years old that your dad is dad, and that half of your genetics that you thought you had were not the genetics that you really do have. And in getting to know him, and I will say that, like, I'll be very selfish. The first things I wanted to know is, hey, is there anything I need to know? Like, any skeletons in the proverbial biological closet I need to know about? And the first thing he said was, well, I've had 4 heart attacks. And my dad, his biological father, my biological grandfather, had died at 49 of a heart attack. And so there I was at 49, having this speech from my doctor about change, finding out this shocking new information about my own genetic well-being, And yeah, like I said, that was a major God sign of like, hey man, I'm giving you this. If you don't wake up from this, you ain't waking up. And so between that, like I say, that was the context in which I said, I should read that book that Jenna keeps mentioning. And I did. And all of that made it much easier to all of a sudden say, there's no option that doesn't include a significant change. There's going to have to be a significant change in my life. So now there's no sacred cows. Now nothing is off the table as far as what I'm willing to do to achieve that. And to be honest with you, it made it easy. It not easy in the sense that I never struggled with it or I never had any challenges with it, but easy in the sense that I was not doing it because of Jenna. I wasn't doing it because of anyone else. Very selfishly, I was doing it so that I would have a chance to live. And now I look back and I'm like, when I say that, when I see people who are drinking heavily, some people will ask me, when you go to a bar, when you go to do something like that, does it make you tempted? And I often say, actually, that's the last place that it makes me feel tempted, because I'm so acutely aware of all these people destroying themselves that it makes it like, remember, this is poison, this is bad things, right? And when they're slurring and they're doing, I'm like, wow, that is, boy, I don't want to join that party again, right? Like, I don't want to go there again. And so it is very much a point of looking at that and saying, the only regret, I mean, I have lots of regrets, obviously. I regret all those Saturday nights when I was being a jerk like that. I regret that my children had to see me passed out on the couch. I regret a lot of those things. And a lot of those things we're making amends for because I have the time to do that now. But the one thing that I regret the most in my own personal journey is that it took me so damn long and that I fought so hard against something that I now look at and say, what was I thinking? Why was I actively locking myself in the cage and throwing the key away instead of letting myself out and being free? It was a cage of my own creation. And I kept saying, this is where I'm free. No, this is where I'm absolutely captive. And the freedom of the last 3 years, the difference that it has made in our marriage, the difference that it's made with our children. And I think that's something I'd like to just touch on quickly, because I think it would probably resonate with a lot of your listeners is, our kids weren't babies when a lot of this was going on. Our son's 15, our girls are 12. So they were aware of what was happening. Like, they were aware that daddy got a little crazy on Fridays and Saturdays, and daddy would be out in the backyard singing. And we were easily going down this road of them looking at that behavior and easily looking at it and saying, maybe that's what I should do. Maybe that's what I would want. Maybe that's what I should, look at as being the right way to act. And I think, all of this will be in retrospect someday, but I think it was really one of the greatest gifts that God gave as far as when all this happened, was that it happened when it did, because now we've been able to have conversations with all of our children about alcohol and about, what we've done, why we've chosen the way we have, what sobriety has meant to us individually and as a marriage and as a family, and have really good, in-depth, meaningful conversations with them about that, and have them now look at it. And almost all three of them say the same thing, which is, I don't ever want to drink. And we're not under any delusion that that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, it's easy to say that in middle school. It's a lot harder.
Sure.
But to know that that's where they now look at and have that point of comparison about what a difference alcohol, or the lack thereof, has made in our lives, and seeing that and being aware of that, I really do hope will help them always have a much different relationship with alcohol than either of us ever did growing up. And I think that's a huge blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, because that's been something that's been similar with our relationship. Our son is now 22. And when I quit, he was 19, and we were going into the pandemic, and we've had some really good conversations. I mean, he drinks, but he has been, I think the awareness, we've raised that awareness because he suffers from anxiety. I suffer from anxiety, and so did Matt. And I've just been real honest, like, look, it's gasoline. You're throwing gasoline on your anxiety if you drink. And I've tried to also say, you know what, if you're going to go out and drink, just think of it as it's a night you're going to go out and do drugs. Just, that's what it is. I'm not telling you not to do it, but just have a complete awareness around it. Unfortunately, I think he's really into bodybuilding, and he's like, you know what, when I do go out, it's like, once a month, mom, with my friends, and it really is that let down, let's do this. And I said, okay, just remember that
he's more mindful about it.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to mess with
really
the gains.
Yeah. And so, but and then what you said about, like, like your kids being younger. Our daughter isn't just now going to graduate from high school, and she's going into her freshman year. And I've said now, the other day was like, she's, Mom, I'm not going to drink. And I go, honey, I'm just going to say you're probably going to drink, but I want you to be aware of it. So it's being able to have an actual conversation instead of 4 years ago. Like I said, okay, all the kids, we don't want any of the kids drinking and driving. Come to our house for after prom or homecoming dance. And there's mom sitting on the couch with her glass of wine. The cognitive dissonance, and just even in the moment going, what are you doing?
Right.
But my kids were safe.
As long as you have to drive
the
anyway,
messaging. And I just want to say too, to the two of you, the messaging, this has been what I think in the book that I appreciated the most was the deck was set against us. I mean, with all the marketing and everything. And come on. I mean, it's like from the day we were born, we've been exposed to, oh, here, have this drink. It will make everything better. Or you mourn with a drink, everything. It's, and I think that was the part of the book that I got really angry when I read about the marketing and how they, and not that I'm I sold radio advertising for a long time, and it was just like, I knew about it, but it was, well, this isn't going to work on me. Well, yeah, it really worked on you. It works on all of us.
On everybody. Yeah.
Well,
so I do have one, but
I was just going to say, that's the interesting part about it, right? Is that, and I mentioned this the other day to somebody, is like, when I first read the book, like, I want to make it very clear, I didn't read the book and be like, gosh, this Annie Grace is the best thing since sliced bread, and I just love her to death, and this is just awesome. I actually was really pissed off. I was angry. I was angry at her. I was angry at the things she was saying. I'm like, why does she keep calling it poison? Like, that's offensive to me. It's lovely. It's something that takes craftsmanship. This is something that, like, I would watch movies about how scotch is made and all that. I'm like, this is like artistry and all this stuff. And I'm like, and then I kept saying to myself, like, wait, again, what am I doing? Why do I keep defending this? Why do and I'm like you, I've been marketing my entire life. And so I realize now, when I go into places and look at all the pretty bottles and I read all this stuff, I'm like, wow, you would think I would know better, but I didn't. I took it hook, line, and sinker. And, we come back to, there's always some pivotal moment that you come back and you say, wait. And I remember that during the beginning of the pandemic, one of the things that we did, as a lot of people did at the time, was we would do puzzles, right? And so we had our whole kitchen table laid out and we were doing puzzles, and we would do them as a family. It was almost like, hey, it's 5 o'clock. Let's work on the puzzle for a little while, right? And my daughter said, but Daddy, don't you want to get your Jameson? Because you don't ever do the puzzle without Jameson. And I'm like, it's not about the puzzle or about family time. I'm using this as an excuse to justify having a drink or two or five. And it was so much in my mind that she was aware of that. Like she was putting this correlation between having time spent with your family and having a drink in your hand to do it. That now it's great because we look at that and they almost look at the two of us like we have this sobriety superpower. Like they look at the world around them and they see how prevalent it is and all this stuff. And they're like, but our parents don't do that. Like not as our parents are weird, but almost like our parents are stronger. And I think that's been something that has really, again, we'll see in great retrospect of life, but at this point I look at it and I say, thank God that they've had that ability to see us at our worst and at our best.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have my one big question, but before I get to that, I'm curious to know from each of you, just one thing from each of you that you think has improved in your marriage since you quit drinking.
Gosh. One thing.
At least one thing, yeah.
I don't know that I can pull one thing. I don't know. I think that's a hard ask of two people, as you can probably tell. I don't know if you noticed that we're very loquacious. That's the hard
really
one.
Pull stuff out of
I
us.
know, yeah. We're not very forthcoming. That's a problem. One thing.
I can't give you your answer.
I feel like I'm failing. I'm feeling I'm gonna have an exam I didn't study for all of a sudden. Oh my gosh.
Or maybe it's just something that's changed. That's, good.
I would go, the first thing that pops into my head is something that he already touched on, which is the arguing. And we used to put like a caveat on our arguing while we were still drinking, which was when things would really get explosive, we'd say the next day, okay, we're no longer allowed to talk about money, when we're drinking. Like it wasn't the drinking that was the problem. It was the fact that we were talking about money when we were drinking, which is, just kind of silly in retrospect. But I would say, yeah, the fact that it's not that we don't disagree now, because we do have moments of disagreement. That's going to happen. But the actual knockdown, drag out fights, the arguing, for argument's sake, and even over really stupid, silly stuff, that we would argue about, that's pretty much, for the most part, that's just disappeared.
Yeah.
It doesn't really exist anymore.
Like that extreme never gets to that extreme anymore, because it's not fueled by that. Well, and as is often the case with alcohol, and I'm not trying to say it as a positive, but as a negative, whatever bumpers you might have on saying things fall away, and now you're just bringing everything out, right? Like now I'm angry,
right?
And now everything's coming out, right? There's no like, well, moderate that, maybe this isn't the right time or place or whatever. And so the issues would get layered on top of one another, that whatever had started it snowballed into then talking about all sorts of other things. That while we're at it, let me tell you about this. And
I remember one time we had a particularly explosive fight about Woody Allen.
Yeah, and at the end we're like, what is happening? What angry about Woody Allen?
We're literally arguing for hours about Woody Allen. Luckily that doesn't happen anymore. I think we laugh a lot more.
What I would say, and again, I think this is something that may resonate with a lot of your listeners, is I can remember, because the alcohol had become such an entrenched part of patterns in my life. And one of the places where alcohol served when I say a central role, was vacations, right? Like when we look back now at how much alcohol we used to bring with us when we would go to the beach every summer, it's stupid. It's like it would kill a grown elephant if it drank that much elephant. And there we were, like, excited about it. Like, oh, we got a whole case of wine and a case of beer. And so the first sober vacation we went on, I remember being like, I don't know how I'm gonna, like, I don't know how to do this. Like, it's been so long. Like, how do you do that? And we would have, it was a ritual to sit up on our porch at sunset and watch the waves and have a drink and do all these kind of things, like all of these things. And I was actually sad. I'm like, I'm gonna miss all that, right? And then we did. Then we went on vacation, and our kids were playing with us, and instead of us being like, leave daddy alone, daddy wants to have his drink, and I was like, yeah, let's play football, let's do all that stuff, let's do it. And I got to the end of that vacation and thought, this was the best vacation I have been on in my life, because I was so present, and our kids didn't get shoved off as soon as the alcohol came out, off to like, hey, just go take care of yourselves, be quiet, and let us have our adult time and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, again, shame on me that I've let it be this, that so many years were lost to that. And so I hear it, and I see it all the time where people will say, I'm going on vacation, I'm really stressed out. I'm like, I hear you. I was there. And I look at it now and I'm like, that was the best thing that ever happened, was being able to have those family times and those really important family memories and not have them dulled or messed up by alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
I so agree. And I totally agree with what you said. I didn't know how. I remember that first, I'm like, I don't know how to do this vacation. And you were still drinking. So that was like a real challenge too. I was like, well, okay, well, I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but we did it.
We did it.
And not pushing off your children. That, I think, is the thing that pains me the most, is that, but going forward, I mean, it's, you know what, that was in the past. And one of the things that Annie did say to me one time, she goes, you were doing the best you could with the tools you had at the time. That's what you thought you were supposed to do.
Right.
And so now I'm like, that was in the past, and I'm moving forward now. So I've come to peace with it, and I'm sure you guys have too. We can't do anything about that. And I think what you're doing now with your kids is just absolutely amazing. And congratulations on that too. So, all right, Matt.
Okay, this is the last question. I promise. All right, so when you're at the beach and you're not having the wine, you're not having the Jameson, what's your favorite go-to NA drink now?
Well, I'll start, because I can, and this is the full disclaimer, I'm actually one of their brand ambassadors, but I'm a huge fan of Athletics non-alcoholic beers.
Yes.
I actually, through somebody through the Alcohol Experience Facebook, said, you should become an ambassador for them. And I have now, and actually the opportunity that I have to compete in Ironman Lake Placid in July is as a member of Team Athletic Brewing. And
awesome.
It has just been a huge part of our life. And I say it to people all the time. I'm like, hey, listen, everybody may have their own journey as far as sobriety is concerned. And all I can do is share my own experience with you, not this is how you do it, and this is the advice and blah, blah, blah. But this is how I did it. And for me, knowing that there are so many quality non-alcoholic beer options, not only makes it easy for me in a social situation to be able to have something that doesn't have to be explained and all that kind of stuff, but honestly, it has opened up so many conversations with friends of mine who, after I came, and again, I don't believe in anything about the and no offense to anybody who believes the AA way, but I don't believe I have anything I need to be anonymous about. I don't have anything I need to be shameful about. I own my life, I own my choices, and I own my sobriety. That's something I'm proud of. And it has opened up so many conversations with people who are like, you know what, I think I need to do that too. Or, hey, can I try some of that non-alcoholic beer? And literally just yesterday, I was out for a ride with a friend of mine, and he still drinks very rarely, but he's like, I've really almost switched entirely to non-alcoholic beer because you really turned me onto it. And I'm like, I just don't. And he's the same way. He's like, I don't need the extra calories. I don't need the like, it screws up my workout the next day and all that kind of stuff. But I like being able to have the flavor, and I like being able to have that kind of experience. without having the negative. And so that's really been, there's a lot of them that they do that are really, really good. So I'm not going to get into all that, but I would say Athletic as a company too, in supporting the, NA, their NA commitment isn't like, well, we have an NA beer, but then we have all these other ones over here. That's all they do. And so I think that just in terms of their mission, it has made a real difference for a lot of people who are in recovery, and frankly, for a lot of millennials who just are choosing not to drink anymore. And I think that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Jenna?
Yes, I like Athletic a lot too. I have my specific ones within Athletic that I like, but my favorite non-alcoholic drink, and especially now that it's summertime, is, I'm probably going to butcher the name, it's Klostaller. And I think it's, is it a malt beverage?
Yeah, it's like a grapefruit one.
But it's grapefruit. Yep. And it's just so refreshing. I love it. So I know there's got to be sugar in it because that's why I love it so much. But it's so refreshing. It's so delicious. And yeah, I absolutely love it.
Awesome. Amazing.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show and sharing your story. And we're just thrilled that you took some time out to share your story with our fans. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. And I really do hope that a lot of people who maybe are listening to this and thinking again, what would life be like without alcohol? Because it's such a central, integral part of their lives and their marriage and everything else. But they want to know that there's a possibility on the other side of that, of not having it be that way. No one could have been more. I mean, alcohol was an absolute central part of our lives. It was. It was not an occasional. It was a nightly thing. And now it is a zero thing. And we are happier, healthier, better parents, better spouses to one another, happier people, better children to our parents who are older now and need help. I mean, there's just all sorts of things that I look at, and there's not a single negative, and there's so many positives. You just have to give it a try. You just have to be willing to give it a try.
Oh, thank you so much for ending us on that note.
Well, thank you, Buck and Jenna. That was an amazing interview. I love the dynamic. I love the history. I love the marriage tips and how the alcohol impacted your marriage too. So and I quitting impacted it.
Yeah, and being that example for their kids. And really to create that conversation. I love the fact that he's like, you know what, you're drinking an NA beer.
I've had the same scenario. Yeah,
it's like, well, maybe I want to try it.
Yeah. And
if you like the taste of beer and you're just like, I don't want the extra calories, I don't want this. But just knowing that there are no downsides.
Yep.
For taking a break from alcohol.
Yep.
So,
and it can change your marriage too.
Yep. So. And for the better.
For the better. Yes. Thank you.
For the better.
All right, kids. Well, that's us for this week. Always check out joyontheotherside.com for all their other information. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that cool stuff. If you have any questions, always reach out to Coach Amy at amy@joyontheotherside.com. But until next week, kids, this is Matt along with Coach Amy wishing you peace and love. And we are out.